What if I told you that every nation on Earth, rich or poor, powerful or struggling, under a single invisible structure? A structure so old, so complex, and so deeply rooted that even presidents, prime ministers, and finance ministers rarely question it. A structure that decides interest rates, fuels wars, triggers recessions, and determines which countries rise and which collapse. The structure is not a government, not a treaty, not a conspiracy theory. It's the architecture of debt, a global system built piece by piece over centuries, shaping the destiny of nations without ever appearing on the evening news. But here's the mystery. If debt is supposedly a tool of progress, why does every country keep sinking deeper into it? Who designed this system in the first place? Let's peel back the layers. Setting the stage. Hidden history, key players to understand the power of debt. We must go back to the early 1500s. European empires were expanding. Wars were expensive. Kings needed money fast. So they turned to wealthy banking families. The Medici in Florence, the Fuggers in Germany, the Rothschilds in London. These early financiers didn't just lend money. They introduced a new idea. Nations could borrow tomorrow's wealth to pay for today's ambitions. It was a revolutionary concept, and it came with strings. Because once a nation borrowed, it needed taxes to repay. And once taxes existed, governments needed more money to enforce them. And once enforcement grew, so did the borrowing. The first layer of the architecture was built. Nations became dependent on private debt, but this was only the beginning. In 1694, England created the Bank of England, the world's first true central bank. Its purpose wasn't stability. It was to fund war. The government issued bonds. Investors bought them. Debt became a tool of power. This model spread across Europe, then the world. A nation's strength was no longer gold or land, it was how much debt it could take on. Debt became the engine of empire. By the 20th century, central banks existed in nearly every major nation. They managed currency, interest rates, and government borrowing. But beneath the surface, something deeper was forming. A global network of interconnected debt. The U.S. Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, the Bank for International Settlements, the Central Bank of Central Banks. These institutions standardized a model where debt wasn't a burden. It was the foundation of modern economies. The more debt a nation took, the more its economy grew. But growth came with a hidden cost. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a decision that transformed the world. He ended the dollar's link to gold. Without gold, money became unlimited. Without limits, debt became infinite. Nations didn't just borrow, they engineered booms through borrowing. And banks didn't just lend, they created money through lending. The architecture was complete. A world where every dollar, euro, yen, and rupee was born in debt. Fast forward to today. Global debt has crossed $300 trillion, more than 3 times global GDP. No nation has escaped. Not the US, not China, not Europe. Every government pays interest to bondholders. Every central bank manipulates rates to keep debt from imploding. Every citizen indirectly fuels the system through taxes and inflation. Debt is no longer a tool. It is the master. Every crisis produces the same response. Lower interest rates, print more money, increase government borrowing, bail out failing institutions, but each solution deepens the architecture instead of repairing it. 2008 didn't fix anything, it expanded debt. 2020 didn't reset the system, it accelerated it. Every bailout is a brick in the same wall. Modern parallels, the pattern repeats. Look around the world today. The United States spends more on interest than on defense. Japan's debt is over 250% of its GDP. European nations rely on the ECB to avoid collapse. Developing countries drown under IMF and World Bank loans. Different nations, different cultures, same architecture. Debt controls budgets, debt controls policy, debt controls the future, and the people benefiting are always the same. Bond markets, central banks, and institutions that profit from the flow of interest.
Us.
Debt is the operating system of modern nations. Not a flaw, but a design. Central banks maintain this architecture by manipulating money itself. Every crisis reinforces the system, ensuring nations never escape it. A world built on infinite debt cannot last forever. Systems based on promises eventually collide with reality. The only question is whether the architecture collapses suddenly, or quietly reshapes itself into something even more controlling. If you want to understand the systems governments never explain, the mechanisms behind money, power, and control, and the hidden forces rewriting the future, like subscribe and turn on notifications.